with you guys, and we'll do that for 30 minutes so you can have informal conversations with them if you want. And then we'll jump into the agenda at 6:30. But again, this first part was designed to be an informal sort of meet and greet so they can come out to you guys in the meeting and bump elbows or bump this and sort of meet the folks in there. So formal sort of program at 6:30.
So, Richard, where are you from?
So we'll take a seat. It's all yours, Mr. Stennis, sir.
Okay, welcome everyone to our police chief candidate first forum. We'd like to start off tonight with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While we're studying, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
you can lead us in prayer, please.
Yes, sir. I got a good friend of mine by the name of Leroy Darby. He gave me my first Bible. Will everyone stand? Leroy Darby, would you lead us in a prayer? Don't stretch your eyes too much, Roy. Come on. Go ahead, Roy. I appreciate you, brother.
Most gracious and heavenly Father, we thankful for this day, for this hour. And Lord, as we just come with grateful hearts for all that you've done for us. And as we come, we also come with some questions, with some anxieties, with some types of reservations that, Lord, we know that you can answer. And Father, we ask that as we come, these candidates that have been presented to us tonight, that, Lord, they will articulate their vision and their plan, as well as our citizens who will be able to articulate their concerns to this committee. And that, Father, you will receive all the glory and the honor in your precious Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. That was a missionary Baptist prayer right there. I was ready to send the hat around. All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you all for it was not highway robbery, because you are two a part of the American dream. You two are part of the history of this great city called Cocoa. And I thank you for your quality time, for being here tonight. And we will take this to another level tomorrow night as well at Eastern Florida State College at B.W. Simpkins building. But tonight, complex. All right, we've done all the primary things. I would like to introduce our council, please. Starting with the youngest member, the effervescent, yours truly, Lorraine Cost from District. Let's give her a round of applause. Okay. Next on the list will be the second youngest, yours truly, Lavender. Yes, down, Mr. Hearn, District number 2. And then the third youngest, Hale Wildcats from District number 1, Mighty District number 1. Yes. Our Deputy Mayor, Mr. Alex Vaughn. And last but not least, a former Tiger 2, Tiger Pride with the Lavender and myself, District number 3. Where are you, Rip? Stand up, Rip down. Yes. Okay, you know yours truly, the oldest member on the board. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Born and played right in these very same streets here. So it's a proud day for the great city of Cocoa, I'm happy to say. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you start at, it matters where you end up at. So we're here tonight to celebrate that. Okay, then I'm gonna turn the podium over to, like I said, Mr. Stenny. Mr. Stenny, you will do, if you wouldn't mind, please, the introduction, I know, of the police staff, but I also would like to introduce the Chief Interview Committee. Are those members here? And I'm gonna call you by your name. Only 2 of them? Okay, well, we're gonna start with my church member right here. Yours truly, Mrs. Tracy Moore. She is an A&T graduate, Aggie, out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Is that correct, ma'am? And an entrepreneur too as well. And I'm happy to say she does a phenomenal job. She wears many hats. Also is Dick Bankhead in the house. Do I see Dick Bankhead, Mr. FPNL? Okay, who's my second one then, Mr. Stanley? Scott Hannon, stand up and be recognized as well. Scott is one of our military personnel, and he's an appointee by yours truly, the youngest member of council, Mrs. Cost, Councilwoman Cost. So you will surrender the floor to you, sir. And thank you. Let's give Mr. Stennett a round of applause. He is so sharp, a cat can't even scratch him. You see how debonair this young man looks? So I thank you very much for your quality time. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir, Mr. HR, Mr. Stennett.
And thanks to everyone for being here. Again, my name is Lawrence Stennett. I'm the HR manager for the city of Cocoa. I was tasked in my role as HR manager to facilitate our nationwide search for our new police chief under the vision of our city manager, Stockton Winton, and my esteemed director, Tammy Jamati, provided exceptional guidance through this. And each city council member, including the mayor and city manager, were appointed a member of the selection committee, two of which were recognized earlier, to assist in the task of getting us down from a large pool to the 5 candidates that you see here now. And I really can't say enough about the level of commitment and dedication that they showed to this task, and really scrutinizing each and every person who applied from around the country to be our next Cocoa police chief. So the way tonight's agenda will work is after I'm done talking, each candidate will have about 3 or so minutes to introduce themselves, and then I will proceed and ask the questions that have been submitted online for our citizens through our web portal. And then time permitting, we will go to the questions for the comment cards that are submitted. And if anybody chooses to or would like to ask a question, we have cards at the back table there. And I just want you to know this is a departure from normal city council meetings where we have a mic in the audience. We're happy to fill out a card and someone to bring it to me. I'll make sure they ask the questions to the candidates. So every question will be answered by each candidate up here. The other thing I want to remind everyone that this meeting will be live streamed on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. So please be on your best behavior. And without further ado, let's start off with the introductions, just proceeding from nearest to me to further away. And we'll start with Mr. Richard Vasquez.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for being here and allowing us to come here and have 30 years of law enforcement experience, and over 20 of them have been as a supervisor and 7 of them as a department head or chief. I've also worked as a detective and undercover in the Narcotics Bureau. I was the commanding officer of the Crime Prevention Section, which is underneath the umbrella of the Community Affairs Bureau. So I have a lot of experience with working with the community. And I also worked in the Transit Bureau, and I know we're going to be getting a train here, so I worked in the Transit Bureau in New York City as well. I teach as an adjunct professor. I teach criminal justice courses, criminal investigations, and one of my favorite courses to teach is multicultural law enforcement. As far as my education, I have a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice, a Master's in Public Administration, and a Graduate Certificate in Police Leadership and Supervision, as well as a Master of Arts Certificate in Terrorism Studies. And I teach English as a second language to speakers of foreign languages. So I'm not going to take much more time. So I just want to say that I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to meeting everybody and getting to know you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, James.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is James Steffens, and to say that I'm privileged and humbled to be here would almost be an understatement. The city of Cocoa has welcomed us through this process, through from the first day to present day. And in terms of the validation of us being here, I have found that, yes, the criteria to be sitting here humbles me even more. I do have 30 years of law enforcement. I'm from the central west coast of Florida. I'm native Floridian, born in St. Petersburg, raised in Clearwater. I did my first 20 years in the Clearwater Police Department and retired as a commander there. Clearwater was known as a community policing, really tier 1 agency known nationwide for our integration within our various communities within Clearwater and Pinellas County. I was able to be appointed, very fortunately, to be the chief of police in a city called Newport Richey, which is in Pasco County on the central west coast of Florida. When I looked at Cocoa and I look at Newport Richey, I see really a brother and sister overlay. I see very, very similar socioeconomic levels. I see the opportunities and challenges that I saw as a chief of police and working with the agency about 70 strong with a budget just a little bit below what we have here in Cocoa. What I will tell you is that as a chief, I was enticed to join the Pasco Sheriff's Office as a commander for the incoming sheriff who had a vision for 500,000 people for the county of Pasco. And I joined as a commander there, which is where my career went to the 30-year mark. I came here about a month ago, and I did some homework, as you would expect us to do. As you looked into us, I looked into you. And I went and spot checked places like Cocoa High School. I came here to the center. I went to Provost Park. I went to Fisk, Dixon. I looked at Clear Lake. I looked at those things that I wanted to speak to me to say, what is Cocoa about? And I checked people very quickly and impromptu as they were caught off guard, but I believe that I peeled the onion for what I wanted to do if I wanted to continue with this process. Fortunately, I was selected to continue it, but what I see, and even with the tour of the police department earlier today, the pride that the residents have here, and I know the anxieties that have been exhibited with the outsider coming in as a chief of police. I think that the city manager and the vision of the mayor and this council is exceedingly exciting and is also leader-based. So in conclusion, I know each of my fellow candidates and I are super excited. I know what I feel. I know what my family feels. We want to see how we can force multiply what you've got going on here and take it where it certainly can get to. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Collett. First, I also want to reiterate what an honor it is to be part of this process. I retired from the New York City Police Department 33 years. I did 33 years and I retired 33 years ago. That would make me very old. So I'll tell you why I joined policing. I'll tell you a little bit about my police career, and I'll tell you why Cocoa. The reason why I became a police officer in 1987 was my grandparents. This is going to sound divisive, but it's the truth. My grandmother had blinding cataracts. My grandfather had multiple sclerosis. He dragged his leg. She couldn't see. He drove, and every night they went to work on Broadway. My grandfather was a ticket taker. My grandmother was an usher. And I spent as much time as I could with my grandparents. But I felt so vulnerable when I was with my grandparents. New York City, the 70s, the 80s. It was crazy. And I would see a police officer and I would feel safe. And I wanted to be that for other people in New York City. So I became a police officer. So, you know, every person that I come across has my grandparents' face on them. And, you know, we're not just vulnerable when we have challenges. We're vulnerable when we lose a pet. We're vulnerable when our car gets stolen. Everybody has their Achilles. So everybody's vulnerable at one time or another. And I wanted to be there for people in those situations. My career spanned 33 years. I was a patrol officer for the first 7. I made sergeant, and I won't take you through all the different ranks, but the highlights of my career is I spent 14 years in narcotics. Very aggressive enforcement. We cleaned up a lot of neighborhoods with the community's help. But I learned a lot from those 14 years. I learned a lot about the impact that even though a person is breaking the law, removing that person from the home does to the rest of the family. And I also learned the positive side that, you know, people can enjoy their neighborhoods again. I spent another 2 years in internal affairs where I handled integrity tests. I interviewed some of the worst corrupt cops that were behind bars, and I used those for training films. I then went to the Candidate Assessment Division, where I was in charge of screening 20,000 people per year to hire 5,000 public safety titles every year. And then I became the first female chief of crime control strategies. That is a position that is one of the top 12 in the New York City Police Department. I was the face of the NYPD. I informed the press of all the crimes, strategies that we were using, and of all the crime statistics. And I had to do that without creating alarm, but yet telling the truth and being transparent. I wound up leaving the police department as the chief of collaborative policing. I really didn't get to fulfill that role to the fullest because the pandemic hit. And we got detailed out to different assignments. In fact, I worked on the supply chain, PPE's supply chain for the city of New York to find out why certain hospitals were getting PPE and certain hospitals weren't getting PPE. Another issue of fairness in the city of New York. So I'm very cognizant of the issues of fairness. And why cocoa? 5 years ago, I came down here, my significant other, he was doing military drills, and he did them in Cocoa Beach. I bought a condo in Cocoa Beach, sight unseen. I am very well aware that Cocoa Beach is not cocoa.
Yes.
Thank you. And I would love to live in the city of cocoa. I love the renaissance that's going on up here, and I would really, really love to be part of it. I can continue to talk about my research as well. I will say this: I watched a press conference with Detective Sergeant, and I guess one of the community officers speaking. And I saw that press conference, and I said, I want to be part of that police department. And so here I am, vying for the job. So thank you very much.
Well, I was told I get 30 minutes. Y'all familiar with Baptist preachers. My dad is a Baptist preacher, but I won't speak like my father. My name is Evander Collier Ford. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I was born and raised there. Went to high school there at a place called Rebolt High School. Some of y'all might be familiar with that. I played, I know it don't look like I played football and ran track, but I did. And I played a little basketball. After graduation, I went to college at the University of Florida to major in engineering. The only reason why I majored in engineering at the time was because when I was looking at police work, police officers in Jackson was only making about, it's gonna give my age, about $17,000 a year. I said, I can't do nothing with that. So I'm gonna become an engineer. So I went to college in Florida, majored in engineering, having some challenging times, and having a good time too. And I was informed that Jackson Sheriff's Office was hiring. So I went on and left school and became a police officer in Jacksonville, and I made the best of it. I started in 1989 as a patrol officer working in predominantly African-American communities. I was a tough cop back then. And I also doing community policing too before they even had a word on community policing, because I think what community policing is to me is basically having relationships with people and having positive relationships with people before you have a problem, and be genuine so that people trust you. And guess what? You solving problems just like that. So I can tell you right now, I might have invented community policing in 1989. But let me continue moving forward. So became a police officer, and I moved through the ranks. I was a sergeant. I was a sergeant of our cops here. I was a sergeant in our detective division, where I was a sergeant in burglary, a homicide supervisor. And if you know anything about Jacksonville, I was a homicide supervisor back then, when we was getting about 150, 60 homicides a year. Okay. I can entertain y'all with all the stories, but I can tell you I worked some very tragic homicides back then. A lot of homicides that make national news. But I continued to grow through the ranks. I was promoted to lieutenant, where I was a watch commander on the midnight shift and day shift. I was also, now in 2007, I was asked by the sheriff to take over a unit called we had a unit we just started called problem solving. Train thoughts coming to me. No. Operation Safe Streets. Operation Safe Streets. So I took over that unit. And I took on that unit at a time when Jacksonville was experiencing a lot of homicides and violent crimes. So when I took over that unit, I had about 75 officers that we deployed in the city. What we were doing, how we solved the problems, that we did problem solving. That's basically when you're trying to understand why these crimes are occurring and really coming up with comprehensive plans to deal with those problems. That was one tactic we used. The other tactic we used, we did what we call hotspot patrol, where we were wherever the criminals were, we were right there. And then you give those officers specific instructions on how to deal with those type of situations. And we're not violating anybody's rights, just letting people know not to violate anyone's rights while we're out there patrolling. So with those things together and also having that community piece where we had a very strong community engagement where I was walking the neighborhoods. As a lieutenant, I was knocking on doors, talking to the community, hey, what's going on? How can we help? And getting feedback from them because we were gaining intelligence from the community based on us knocking on doors to find out what's going on. How to do that here if I'm selected as the next chief. Because I just believe that really going out there and engaging the community, that's how you get information. That's how you get intelligence that you won't necessarily get just by sitting behind a desk and waiting on some data to pop up on a computer. That is a good way. I'm not taking away from crime analysis, but I also believe that we have to knock on these doors and really talk to people and engage them to get information to be successful. Okay, so I continue to grow in the agency. I had Operation Safe Street, so we were very successful. We knocked violent crime down about 50% during my tenure there. And the sheriff said, man, you're doing such a great job. Listen, we're going to make you a stadium commander as well. So I was wearing 2 hats at the sheriff's office. Operation Safe Streets, a stadium commander. As a stadium commander, if y'all familiar with Jacksonville, we have a losing football team. I was stadium commander when we were winning. So I think that made a difference. So I was directly responsible for about 85 up to 100,000 fans during the Florida Georgia weekend. I was the last man there. I was the first person to get to work and the last person to leave. I was responsible for the safety and security there, so we were very successful doing that. And the sheriff said, man, you're doing such a great job. We want to make you an assistant chief. So I was appointed to assistant chief where I had about 165 employees. That included lieutenants and sergeants working under my command. I had the downtown district for a while and also had our detective division over property crimes for a little while. So I did that, and then I eventually retired after 31 years of service. But 20 years of that was in command leadership roles. Enough about my career, so let me tell you a little about personal about me. So I have 2 kids, and I like to be consistent. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is 23 years old, just graduated from FIU University, which is a great thing because she's working now and she's out of my pocket. My son, he spent about 4 years in the Air Force, so he's out, and he's back at home with me. And to stay consistent, if he don't tighten up by the time I get back, I'm gonna probably have to find another place. I think y'all can probably relate to a 26-year-old just trying to figure out what life is all about. I have a dog named Sierra. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but she's a lab shepherd mix, and she's 18. I've had her 18 years. So I take care of my dog like I take care of my people. Okay, y'all get that. Thank you, man. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That was my kid.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Mike Wallace. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to be a little quicker. I know we don't want to do things. I apologize. We're going to kind of giddy out a little bit. So a little bit about myself. Currently, I am a captain of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I oversee the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Violent Crime Division. I have 140 people under my command. We do all the bad stuff, unfortunately. So I know what it's like. I've been doing that for the past 5 years. So I'm going to work a little bit backwards now. Prior to that, I was the district commander at our biggest and largest and busiest patrol district. And prior to that, when I first got promoted to captain, I was out in the Glades. If anybody knows Palm Beach County, I was in the Glades region. 3 cities out west in Palm Beach County. Smallest of the 3 cities is South Bay. And the middle city is Pahokee, and the largest city is Belle Glade. Belle Glade's about 20,000 people. I can very easily equate Belle Glade to Cocoa. So as the district commander out there, I had 3 city managers I had to deal with, 3 city councils I had to deal with. So I was answering to people. They would call me, people called me chief. Every city I went to, I was the chief. I had to go to commission meetings. I had to take care of everything like a police chief would do. And I loved my time in the Glades. And I'll tell you, quick, when I first got out to the Glades, I was kind of a little bit of a fixer. There's a couple of issues with the deputies out there. People were not engaging with the community. So I told the guys I wanted park, walk, and talk. PWTs. Park your car, get out of it, go talk to people. Our patrol deputies in the Glades were rotating zones. We never had the same guy work the same zone when they were working. Kind of thought that was silly. How do you get to know the people that live in that zone and the problems in that zone if you're constantly moving around? So I told them we're going to stop doing that. We're going to start doing PWTs. Now, I'm also not a guy that likes to sit behind a desk. So I got out as the boss and I started walking communities. But I expected my people to do that also. And then even better than that, when I started calling the city council, I called the mayor, Steve Wilson, great guy. And, hey, Mayor, I'm going on a walk next Tuesday. Where do you want to go? And the mayor would come with me. So in Cocoa, if the mayor starts going on walks, what do you think the other commissioners are going to do? The council are going to do? So people are going to start walking, and we're going to get out and we're going to start talking to people. So we're going to keep going backwards. I'm still investigations. I've been very fortunate in my career at the sheriff's office that I was able to work around a lot of things, investigations of narcotics. After 9/11, we had a full-time SWAT team. I was a member of that. I was actually one of the squad leaders. I became the terrorism guy. South Florida is the 3rd largest Jewish population in the country after Israel and New York. And we had started protecting things. I did all of the vulnerability assessments. So for the trauma centers, for the FP&L plant we had, you have to look at how, if somebody was going to attack a plant, how do you protect it? Somebody wants to attack the Cocoa water plant, how are we going to protect it? Can they put something, can they introduce something into the water? What happens then? So there's a lot of things that through my time, in my experience, that I've kind of run the gamut. I started my law enforcement career in New York City in 1984. A bunch of people in this room weren't even born then. So 1984, New York City, the crack epidemic was starting. AIDS was really blowing up, and it was a crazy time on the Lower East Side of Manhattan as a 20-year-old. I have 4 kids. They are my life. I love them. My oldest is a deputy in the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. He's 24. My oldest daughter's 23. She's graduating from nursing school May 1st. Then I have a 22-year-old daughter. She causes me some heartache, but God love her. She's daddy's little girl. And then my youngest son is a freshman at college up in North Carolina, where both my kids played football. I was a football player, so I have a lot of enthusiasm. I'm a pretty energetic guy. I will talk fast, and New York will come out when I get excited. So I'm honored to be here. What I will say, the last thing, I apologize, Mr. Mayor. This process has been exceptional. I've gone through other police chiefs processes before, and I've actually rescinded my name. Because if the city is not taking who that police chief is serious and do the process serious, it's not a place I want to be. So Cocoa has really, they stepped up, and this process has been awesome. In fact, they have community members here. My 30 seconds just popped up, so thank you very much for being here, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you very much, candidates. We'll proceed on to the questions that were submitted in advance of tonight's meeting. I'll offer the reminder that we are requesting to keep the responses to 3 minutes. Every now and then take a glance up to the back of the room. For the 30-second card, you can see Samantha in the orange holding that up. And we want to try to facilitate the opportunity to answer as many questions as we can. So we'll start off here on the end closest to me and then proceed in that direction. And then each person will start off differently. Okay, so the first question, and the question comes from Jerry Blanco of Cocoa. He wants to know, if you're selected for this position, what is your philosophy on promoting from within versus recruiting from outside the department for promotional vacancies?
Well, I'm sure that the police department has rules and regulations as to promoting within. If you have to promote somebody to sergeant, there's a list and there's an exam that has to, so you have to follow those rules. I believe that when you can promote from within, you should promote from within. If there isn't anybody who is qualified to take the position, then maybe you go outside. But what I've done in my previous leadership roles is I've provided training and guidance to the members who work with me, because I like to say they work with me, not for me, because you have to be partners with everybody. So what I did was I provided training, and I was making sure that they were ready to take on leadership roles, because at the end of the day, I knew that I was not going to be the police chief or the inspector general for 10 years in New York City or in Woodbury, because when politicians change, they bring other people. But what I did was I made sure that the people that worked with me got the proper training, leadership training. I hosted the Southern Police Institute. I had them come over, and I had many of my members come and take the Chief Executive Leadership course. I actually sat in with them as well, even though I have taken already previous leadership courses. And so the bottom line is that if you can promote from within, you should. And you should provide the leadership and the training to make sure that they're able to take on these roles in the future.
It's an excellent question. And I think that the prudent approach is that you take, and we're going to talk with Coco, so you have such a rich history, and you have folks that born and raised here and generationally have been here 3-4 generations. The fear that within law enforcement is that you have a traditional sense of succession. You have a traditional sense where often it's from internal. You build and you have your succession from within. There's exceedingly high pros to that, and there's negatives to that. It depends on a viewpoint whether or not an agency has an opportunity to see within itself and be constructively critical within itself and to say, are we progressive? Are we going to where we need to go to? The city manager and through the commanders that are presently at the police department have hit the pause button on promotions within the agency, and I congratulate that risk and that leadership right there. Early in my career, I was a personnel and training sergeant, so in terms of the recruitment and retention of officers, I was the one principally responsible for that. And then as you see, as you work through your plans up to the chief of police, you're responsible for putting people into harm's way. And you're responsible for sending them voluntarily into harm's way and to take care of their families. So my belief is that I will look at the entire organizational structure. We can look at things and say, okay, is it going to take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What are we going to do to look and really peel the onion to see what is our family? Because that's what the family is. We're not talking about just the personnel within the police department, but their family and their roots and their foundations. So the fear of a change agent coming in is a real fear, because it's somebody that you are facing right now from Coco coming in from the outside for probably more than 20-something years. You haven't had the look outside the agency for the top leader of your agency. So I believe that the model can work for both. You can have an outside person, leader, bringing in outside subject matter experts to force multiply your agency. But I also believe that your family is within, and I believe that if we have those folks that are leaders and believe in succession within Coco, then we're going to be able to get that answer for you very succinctly and promote from within, develop the culture of Coco further from this point forward, and then we're going to be set. So thank you.
The way I interpret the question is, yes, promoting within, but it's more cultivating talent. So you can promote from within, but you can also cultivate talent from within. Not everyone wants to be an executive in the police department. Some people want to go the canine route. Some people want to go the investigative route. And it's my job to develop talent. I do think that the promotions should come from within. If you need something very specific, someone to be an intelligence analyst, that might not be available right away when you need it in your police department. And you can bring someone in at a higher level to do that job. Sometimes it's just an as-need basis, and you have to do it. But you should set targets. There should be role models, and that's how the department stays on mission. If there's no incentive, how does the department stay on mission? And it shouldn't be a mystery as to whether or not you can move up within the department, or move laterally, or get some specialized detail that interests you. So yeah, I think it's, the answer is absolutely promote from within, and in rare circumstances, you have to get the talent from outside.
Thank you, I appreciate it. She's learned. I promise y'all I will be brief. My response to the question is this. I think that you want to try as much as possible to promote within. Because you have individuals that's been working in that department for a long time. They deserve opportunities. However, if they're not ready, why set them up for failure? So we have to be in a posture of training. I've been an advocate of training, getting people the training that they need to be successful, because we want to be successful. And we want to be transparent as well, too, because I have to tell you, I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell you if I don't think you're ready. But I'm going to tell you how you can get ready, so that you can be ready when that next time comes. That's how I believe we should be in the posture of doing that, working from within. Now, let me tell you what's the misconception here. And some of y'all may look down on me when I say this, but I'm going to be honest with you. Just because a person has made it to the rank of lieutenant in the department does not mean that they're a leader. And they're the right leader. They were just fortunate and lucky that somebody probably liked them and gave them the benefit. So we got to be in the posture, really trying to develop true leadership. True. And we have to make sure we're training, and we have to lead by example. So to answer your question, I want to do within, but we're going to make sure we're doing it right. Yes. Going outside is going to be the last alternative to me, because everybody's going to know exactly where I stand and what the expectations are. Thank you.
I think the five of us cannot complain about Coco going outside, because we wouldn't be sitting here. Thank you for going outside. But to answer that question, and I believe it's incumbent upon the head of the agency to train people up. And regardless of what you do, you have to train the people that work underneath you. And you have to teach them to take your job. So if you were to hire me as the police chief of Coco, I would be training the next police chief. That when I walk out of here several years from now, whenever that may be, whenever you all get sick of me and tell me it's time to go, there's going to be a person in this agency that's going to be everything that you need to take over. So you have to look at, is it education? You wanted a master's degree. That was a preference. We make sure people have education. We have to give them opportunities. You wanted the FBI Academy was a plus. I went to the FBI Academy. So the Police Institute was a plus. I went to SPI. So what are we doing as a city to make sure people are getting that training? So a lot of that really looks really good on a resume. It does. And I'll tell you right now, you look at me on paper, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. That's on paper. What is the substance to it? So what are we doing to get real training for people to teach them to be leaders? And you look at leaders, just because, again, a person is the chief, is he really a leader? Or he's the lieutenant, is he really a leader? You know, you look at the informal leaders, and those are the people that you want to grab. The guy that's running that shift, the guy that's really everybody goes to, really not going to the sergeant, that's the guy you want to identify, guy or girl, you want to identify and start coaching them up. And I believe in that. We have to take that, internally, coach them up. So the answer to that question is, while yes, I'm here because you went externally, I have every intention on staying internally for promotions. I'm part of my promotional process at my current agency. I write a lot of the questions. I write most of the scenarios that we do. We do everything internally. We don't bring assessors in because nobody knows your agency better than the people that work in your agency. Now, I can tell you, this is why I can do this, that, and the other at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. You have no idea if you're from outside the agency, what our capabilities are. So I know this is a smaller agency, so I'm not going to compare the two. We'll bring outside assessors in. But we should stay internal. We should stay internal.
Thank you. For the next question, we're going to start with James Stephens. James, this question comes from Pamela Shea of Coco. Pamela writes, Cocoa Village has an attractive nightlife, which begins after 9 p.m. and continues until 2 a.m. The challenge has been providing necessary measures to protect the staff and patrons, especially in the early hours. How would you address these growing challenges?
Thank you. Excellent question. The police department is a partner, and it's a partner in the community. So it's not the place of the police department to impose its will upon the community. We are the referee. We're a partner, and we are going to sit and we're going to work with each of those businesses as well as the outliers, because it really is a quality of life. I know that the village is clearly a destination, and it is exceedingly exciting, and it has its identity right there. So we know that the charters, the ordinances, the Florida state statutes, law enforcement's going to be the referee. But there's the ability to work together to see how this nucleus of businesses, how does it affect the body of Cocoa and the influx. So we've seen the tragedies of what happened in South Beach last week. And we know that we're talking about symptomology to what really is root causes. So our ability to communicate and be constructive and be real as we hear with one another, find out what is the ultimate goal. It's to have a quality of life in Cocoa, to have visitors, but to make sure that our residents who have, and our business owners who have invested within certainly that area that we're talking about, but holistically Cocoa, how can the police department work in partnership to explain where our laws and statutes and our enforcement capabilities are, where our discretion is, certainly looking at things that are tangible like extra duty, off duty, volunteers, the V Corps, things of those natures that work to educate, but also to make sure that we're not having that same conversation every year about what are we doing about noise or what are we doing about ingress and egress of traffic. So if we're able to work from the ground up, we'll be able to problem solve that long term. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing with the question is it's a safety issue, and if it's a safety issue and in Cocoa Village, you know, at the closing of the bars or during the hours of 9 and 2, we have to get to the root of the problem. Why don't people feel safe? What is actually going on? And we have to implement a strategy to bring that down so that we don't have to just have high visibility to ensure that crime doesn't happen. What are the causes of the crime? We have to discuss that with the business owners and victims. We have to do an intense data dive if there are victims, and then we have to develop a strategy to bring those numbers down so that we don't have to put 4 cars there at the end of the night. We can put 1 for high visibility. I think that's the way to start with that, with an issue with nightlife and people feeling safe. Everybody likes to see a police car. That's not so much of a problem, 1 car versus 4 cars. So my background is about crime strategies and looking at the data, talking qualitatively, talking quantitatively, getting the experience of the frontline officers and finding out what's going on. So.
In Jacksonville, to give you some perspective, Jacksonville has about 1 million residents. When I was an assistant chief, I had our downtown district. And in downtown, we had a place called the Jacksonville Landing. It's not there anymore if you go there, so don't worry about that. But the Jacksonville Landing was a hot spot where people went to have fun, party, and things of that nature. And as the chief, I made sure at night, during closing hours, that we had several police officers in the area. Because the reason why we did that, not only for the safety of the people, but you got individuals coming into town and they're passing through, having a good time. There's nothing like seeing several police officers in the area, so they feel safe, reputations get out, they start spreading word to other people, and so those other friends and neighbors will start coming down to visit the village of Cocoa. So I'm a proponent of having high visibility, at the same time, get down to the root problem, really solving crime problems. But I think that you can't beat the high visibility. And so I believe in doing that, having some walking beat officers in those areas, some bike officers if you don't already have that, We want to have that high visibility. When I was the commanding officer of our night shift in our south side area of Jacksonville, we had several nightclubs. We had one club in particular. At night, we had off-duty officers there, but it was like thousands of people there. I sent some of my officers over there to help support when they had turned out at night, because we learned when people leaving at night, they'll just go right down the street and cause a problem. Well, guess what, my officers are right down the street, so they can't keep going. Okay, so you have to be proactive about that, because people don't really feel safe unless they see a police officer. That's the reality of it. So we want to make sure we have the visibility, but we're also going to be fighting crime too at the same time. Thank you.
So the police department and the businesses in the historic section, they have to be partners. This was actually a question that was asked of us during the last interview process. And the police department has to have a footprint in the nightlife here. So Coco's sort of become a little bit of a hub of nightlife. You're getting people from other areas of Brevard County or outside of Brevard County coming here. So let's look at what Coco's trying to do. Trying to bring business in. You want people to come here. You want people to spend money. You want tax dollars, right? Somebody gets hurt here because they got robbed walking back to their car, leaving one of the bars. It's not going to be a good thing for Coco. That's incumbent upon the police department to make sure that doesn't happen. And you can't be everywhere. So again, you get into a partnership and you talk to the business owners and you ask them. They got to pony up some money if they can. Now I know we're all dealing with COVID. Everybody doesn't have the dollars they used to have. We understand that. If the business owners don't have some money to hire an off-duty officer to work this area, then the police department has to look at that within the budget. And with those nights, because I know it's not every night, the nights when it's active here, whether it be ladies' night or whatever night it is, Tuesday night giveaways, you have to have officers that are readily available in the scene. So that's really the way I look at that they have to be, that's a partnership. And the other thing is that the business owners and the police department got to discuss.
I just wanted to add one thing about the previous question. I was very fortunate when I was the police chief in Woodbury. I was the police chief that was hired from outside, and it was the first time in the history of the police department that they did that. And the town board asked me, they said, "Chief, if we hire you, how can you make sure that we never have to go outside again?" And I promised that I would train and provide the next chief. And someone I mentored is currently the police chief in the town of Woodbury, so I just wanted to comment on that. As far as the issue with the nightlife, I just think omnipresence is key. We have to make sure that the police department has enough personnel working to patrol the area. We had a problem in Woodbury where we wanted to make sure that we didn't have the resources for a school resource officer. So what I did was I staggered patrol and make sure that every single unit took turns going to the location. So depending on the amount of personnel, that's one way to tackle the situation, is staggering patrols and having directed patrols. In the town of Woodbury, for example, when I got there, the police officers were not as proactive as I wanted them to be, and people complained that they didn't really see them. So I made sure that they were out and about, riding, and they were out of the station house. And people actually asked me about hiring additional police officers, which was not the case. I just had them working. So that's one thing we have to do, is make sure that the people are out on the road and not just waiting around for calls. And so even myself, when I was a burglary sergeant and I knew that I was in a burglary-prone location, I would sit down and have my lunch or my coffee in my cruiser so that at least I was visible. And when people see a uniform presence, be it a police car or a member walking or riding a bicycle, they will think twice about committing a crime. In the NYPD, we had a lot of nightlife, as you can imagine, and we had a cabaret team, cabaret captain, and units that would work the area. And again, that's just a way to make sure that you're visible, and that people who would be thinking about committing a crime, they would think twice about it. I would also meet with the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses, especially the bar owners, to see what the problems are, the issues, and have them be part of the solution. We need to make sure we can't make all the decisions. I think that this is also part of community policing, and I've always advocated that when you want a true community policing program, you have to have input from the community. Oftentimes, we do not include the community, but we definitely have to include the community in the decision-making process. Thank you.
Okay, for our next question, we're going to start with Ms. Lori Pollock. So this question comes from Candace Rogers of Cocoa. She'd like you to describe what new changes, new ideas, or new attitudes you will bring with you to the start of your career.
Very good question, Candace. Not here though. Right, no. So I don't think that there's anything particularly new out there right now. There's things that would be new to Cocoa. I think that in this time and place, harm reduction is really what we need to be looking at when we deal with our communities. De-escalation training is so critical. I know that that you do practice de-escalation, but I think there needs to be much more training for all officers countrywide. Personally, we didn't get enough de-escalation training in New York City. We're on the precipice of protests on a weekly basis all over the country, and de-escalation at protests, at jobs dealing with mental health, people in mental health crisis, drug misuse, all these things really, really rely on de-escalation techniques. Deciding what type of position you're going to put yourself into that you might not be able to get out of, about being guardians instead of warriors. I don't think we impress upon our police officers enough the guardian mentality. The guardian mentality will save police officers' lives, will save civilian lives, and I think that it's just walking the talk. And it's not new, but that is my philosophy, the guardian philosophy. There's a time to be a warrior. There's active shooter situations, you're going into warrior mode. But thankfully, we don't have to deal with that consistently, in our community. But like I said, I think about that, I get a little upset. But guardian mentality is really what we have to impress upon our officers. Not new, but something that has to be consistently reinforced.
What you get from me is an individual that's a strong leader, that's going to lead by example, that's going to have high integrity, and going to have the same expectation of his staff and of all his employees. I believe that the department should reflect the community it serves as far as diversity. We have to improve upon hiring African Americans and women and ensuring that they have paths as well for upward mobility. Times have changed now. I mean, this community now is like 60%, don't get me quote me wrong, like 60% white, about 30-something% black, and then the rest fall in between. And I know the department is a little lacking in some areas like that, and we have to improve upon that. So we have to be aggressive in trying to attract individuals of the minority and female group to get them on the department and ensure not only that it's a fair process for everybody, it's going to be a domino effect because we're going to mentor everybody. Everybody's going to be mentored. Everybody's going to have the same opportunity to grow within the agency. That is my vision. That's what I'll be talking about from day one. I would not make drastic changes right now. There's something need to be immediately changed, like right now. But other than that, I want to give out the department a time to grow around me, and we're going to work on this together. They're going to know exactly what the vision is. And I think that's how you become a great police department, by having the boldness to be that change agent for the betterment of the community. And that's what I would do.
So if I am your next police chief, what I will tell you, there's no magic pill. There's nothing you just throw out there. You can't throw foo-foo dust on and everything becomes wonderful. Now, are there issues in Cocoa? Yes, there's issues everywhere. So what are we doing to address those issues? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that any of us would be better than anybody else. It's all of us for what we've done in the past. So we've addressed issues like this before. I've addressed issues like Cocoa has right now. I've addressed it. And what are we doing with communication? That's one of the things that we haven't really discussed, is how are we communicating with people? So with me, and I will tell you, all of us went to the police academy, 3 of us went to the New York City Police Academy. The cops in here will tell you, we're taught to tell people what to do. Do this, do it now. Put your hands up, put them up now. Get down, get on the ground now. We're taught that. That's ingrained in us. I'm really good at that, trust me. I'm really good at telling people what to do. What we're not good at, and what we have to learn, is asking people what they need from us. So asking people, sitting down, what is it that you need? Tell me what I can do to help you. You know, you look at community policing, and community policing has been thrown around, and my agency has a community policing unit. There's different guys in each patrol district that do community policing. That doesn't make sense to me. Community policing is a philosophy, and it starts at the top of the agency, and everybody does it, not just certain guys. And community policing is not taking some kid to a football game and having a barbecue on Saturday, playing midnight basketball at the park. Is that part of community policing? Yes. But community policing is a philosophy. It's how we're talking to people, how we're treated to people, how we're engaging with people. Expect the guys and girls that I work with to treat people with respect and dignity. And what you will get from me, and I expect the guys and girls that I work with, you will determine how I treat you. You will. You treat me with dignity and respect, I'll give it back to you tenfold. You come at me sideways, that's probably not going to be a good day for you. It's not. And that's the reality to this job, that some people don't want to hear that. You know, I've told other people that they kind of look at you sideways, and I can't believe you just said that. That's the truth of this. That's the reality to it. You know, law enforcement is a contact sport sometimes. People get hit. I used to have a nice, cute nose. I got hit a couple times, and I'm telling you, whenever you punch in the face, it's not fun. So, I'm good, thank you. So what I would come out with is that, communication. We gotta talk to people, gotta break down barriers, gotta find a common goal.
So 2020 was a terrible year. We not only had a pandemic, but the entire country saw the protests that we experienced. That, unfortunately, is a product of aggressive and over-policing. I've been in policing for 30 years, as I said, and unfortunately, we as young officers were asked, reduce crime, make more arrests, issue more summonses. And that form of over-policing is what caused these protests and these unfortunate events throughout the entire country. So reform is needed, and we have to make sure that when we do apply reform, that we do not forget that we also have to take care of the police officers. Police officers, for the most part, want to do an excellent job. They want to serve the public, but we need to spend money. There were calls to defund the police. In my opinion, that would be the biggest mistake that any community can have. Instead of defunding the police, make sure that they have enough money and resources to train them on de-escalation, and so that we can create meaningful relationships. President Obama had the task force on 21st century policing. Those are great recommendations that every police department should follow. We need to have community outreach, and we need to partner. And we need to partner with clergy, religious leaders, and leaders of the community. And we need to do that prior to an ugly incident occurring. This way we can call on them, because I don't think it's right to call somebody you don't know and say, I need you to help me out, I have a problem. You need to call somebody that you know. And this individual, when I was the commanding officer of the crime prevention section, I reached out to the community in that way. And I made sure that every one of my contacts had my personal phone number. And if I was home, I would come back to work. And I lived in a suburban county, so it was quite a ride, at least 40 minutes. And I had no problem with coming back. And I had meaningful relationships, and it assisted every single time. And that's one thing that has to be brought to every community. Thank you.
Thank you. Most of my answer is going to speak to the police department. Law enforcement's got to be professional, and you've got to look at your toolbox. So my toolbox is going to include that we look at our homeless situation, we look at our substance abuse and mental illness issues, we look at critical incident stress management, we look at the chaplaincy programs, we look at partnering with the professionals that are already in this community and serve as a force multiplier. When law enforcement can look at your de-escalation, and they can look at the challenges that they're facing, even as we watch the trial that's underway in Minnesota, and we say, and you have people say, well, that will never happen here. how is it that we would have that logic? We have to be thinking about, are we planning for that bad day? And what makes Cocoa so special that it'll never happen here? So what I'm gonna bring is the reality that we better be planning for that event. We better be planning for that active shooter. We better be looking at the situations that even within our own bubble, who is vulnerable within our own agency that needs assistance, their family needs assistance. Because I know that if you go for heart surgery, you're looking for the best cardiologist out there. And our cardiologist is surrounded by a team of professionals. Law enforcement is going to be that cardiologist. It's going to be that specialist that's surrounded by it. So the toolbox that from day one I'm looking at is that the enhancement of our volunteers. I also have a litany of folks that want to come volunteer who are subject matter experts from around this country and certainly around the state to help build upon what's going on here, but also be a leader where we can be a host agency for regional training events, where we have folks come to us and we be the instructors, and then we can have that radiate out throughout this region and really look at our mutual aid that we're the ones leading the charge as opposed to following someone else's charge. So I think the toolbox is how I prefer to answer this question. And what have we got in the toolbox and what are we going to add to it? So, thank you.
So for the next question, we'll start with Mr. Evander Collier for the first response. Evander, this question comes from Anthony Blunt of Cocoa. Anthony would like to know, what plans, if any, do you have to change the way the citizens of Cocoa in high crime areas view law enforcement?
I know y'all looking at me sideways, me coughing. I have my shots. This pollen is terrible. This pollen got me, so I just thought I'd put that out there. You don't have to look at me sideways. I have all my shots. If you want to see how you know, throughout my career, and I mentioned this earlier, I've always been engaged with the community. As a young officer back in 1989, I would go to some housing communities, low-income communities. I see kids out there playing basketball. I can play a little basketball. I'm in uniform playing basketball with the kids. I see them at the pool table in the pool hall. I go and shoot a little pool and having conversations with them. They knew me by name and things of that nature. We have to get back to that. As a lieutenant, I was sitting in my office one day and I said, you know, lieutenants have a lot of time on their hands. As a lieutenant of the sheriff, I'll give you a perspective. I had 4 sergeants and about 40 officers that worked under me. And I was sitting in the office one day and I said, you know what, we can do more. I said, I'm gonna start doing lieutenant's walks. So as the leader, I went out in these neighborhoods, took a couple officers with me, the beat officers that worked that area and also the supervisors. And we went on knocking on doors, talking to people, introducing ourselves, learning what crime problems you may or may not have. We'd take that information and we would do follow-up with them when they were making crime reports. That's how we develop those relationships. That's what I would do in those communities that the individual just asked me. That's right up my alley. She must know me. That's what I would do, go in those communities and really engage those individuals and talk to them and make sure my staff, my officers, they understand that's what we're going to be about. There's going to be a time to knock down doors, run some people down, justify police pursuit, but that's not going to be our number one priority. Okay? Work has changed. The dynamics of police work has changed. We cannot solve our problems by ourselves. We have to have the community involvement. We have to have those relationships. They have to trust us, and we are going to be accountable. Because I don't tolerate anything less than that. Thank you.
So to answer this question, sort of some of the things I've already said, you know, a community policing philosophy, getting officers out of the car, park, walk, and talk, asking people. Again, one of the things, and it's because I've done this, and I'll tell you, is you go to a high crime area and you have kids outside, and I've done this, and you stop. And here's the white officer that stops. I get out of the car with a football. Start having a catch. I'm having a catch for one kid. And what happens now? More kids come out. And a few more kids come out. Who's watching that? mommy, daddy, or mommy, grandma, people inside the house are watching that. And what are they saying? And then you start talking to people and you start building relationships. And I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten that that's really what it is about. It's all about building relationships. And because I've done this in areas, especially when I worked at Belgrade, and then people are starting to understand that they can tell you something. And I'll give you, for instance, it's happened with one of the kids I have played football with. His mother, she'd see me once a week, having to catch the kids. You get something going on, what does a football cost? You go to Dick's Sporting Goods, it costs $15 here, the easiest $15 I've ever spent. Let the kids play with the football. We had a shooting in that neighborhood, and the kid's mother, because I had a relationship now with them, was telling me, hey, the gun you're looking for is under the red car. So I went to the red car, and she's like, hey, stupid, the other red car. And we found the gun. And now you have the gun, now you have the weapon that was used in the shooting, you get to tie back to people, and so on and so forth. But that's how relationships are built. So when you look at what's gonna be done in these areas, there's probably a big distrust of law enforcement in some of these areas. I'm gonna eventually guess, I don't live in Cocoa, hopefully I will be. So what are we doing? What are we doing? Especially me, what am I doing? Because this is the face. My face is the face of most law enforcement officers in the United States. It's a white male. So what are we doing in these predominantly African American or Hispanic communities to try to break down barriers and start to talk to people and start to understand that there's common goals, we have things in common. Don't have to be everybody white or everybody Hispanic or everybody black. What are we doing to start breaking down barriers? That's what I would do.
So as I stated earlier, I work in the Community Affairs Bureau as one of the assignments within the New York City Police Department, and that's something that I took when I was the police chief in the town of Woodbury. One thing I always had was monthly community meetings where the community could come in. I took a step further when I was the chief. I had an open door policy, not only with my staff, the police officers and all the supervisors, I had an open door policy with the community. Anybody from the community could come. They didn't have to, unannounced, they could just come. If I was not in a meeting or if I was not busy, I would see them. If not, I would come out and make an appointment so that they can come and see me another time. Anybody could come, we could discuss any issue. But during these community board meetings, we discussed issues that were affecting the community. And they liked it so much that there were times where they provided information regarding homicides or shootings, which they would not have had they not been part of these meetings. I cannot say it enough, but we have to include the community in the decision-making process. We are the law enforcement officials, but we cannot get anything accomplished without their assistance. So we need to get out there, we need to speak to the citizens. I would recommend to revamp and make sure that there's a citizen satisfaction survey, especially targeting these areas that you're saying where there might be some high crime. And we need to be omnipresent there and show that we're patrolling the area. We need to have positive interactions. And one thing I did in the town of Woodbury is I started a Citizens Police Academy. I know that there's a Citizens Academy here for the government, for the city, but they should have a Citizens Police Academy. This way people who either work or reside in the city of Cocoa can come and learn what it is to be a police officer, and so that they can learn why it is that we do what we do, or sometimes why we don't do what they think we can do. Like if we get a call that says there's a male selling drugs, and the police officer comes and doesn't search the guy or arrest the guy, it's because we have to follow the law. We cannot violate people's civil rights. And I think that's something that people should be made aware of. In addition to that, the deputy mayor asked me yesterday how I would interact with people of the age between 25 to 35. Now, it is important to reach the youth because they're the ones that will grow up, and if you have positive interactions with them, then that goes a long way. But some people who may not have had good positive interactions with law enforcement, who have maybe negative interaction with law enforcement, the key is to, I think it's nice to develop a training. We train the police officers on de-escalation and how to act in a situation. I would offer a training or at least counseling for people to how they should react when they get stopped by the police. Because I think that sometimes, the police officers are in fear. And when they stop a car and they think that there's some crime that was committed. So I think it would be beneficial, not mandatory, obviously, but if they wanted to come, I think it would be a very positive interaction that could help alleviate some problems with the community. Thank you.
It's a fantastic question. I see it as building trust and building tenure, which means building relationships. I was pretty surprised to find out that the mayor is an 8th grade school teacher. And you talked about the powerful gregarious, and he stepped out, so this isn't for me directly to him. But when you have somebody that identifies with their community, what I found is that I asked one of your officers, where's a high crime area? Where can I go get in trouble in Cocoa? And he said, well, actually, sir, we have challenged areas, not high crime areas. And I was very impressed by that because it was a young officer, young in life and young in tenure. And I found that in order to have the challenged areas work with law enforcement, it's got to be on trust. And it's got to be on the fact that they identify with those officers and the leadership. I piloted a program in El Salvador that helped train 5 of the Central American countries on community policing. You're like, why would you go to Central America to do community policing? Well, they asked America to find out what do you do right that we can do down there. And the problem in Central America back in 09, 10, 11, when we cranked this program up is they ship all their officers in from outside because of the gang violence. Nobody in the community knows who these officers are, what the national police are. In Cocoa, we're losing officers consistently after they get the training, 2 years, 3 years, and they get sucked up by neighboring cities and the sheriff's office. How can you expect your community, let alone your challenged areas, to build trust with you if you're always changing? And how can you as an agency expect that community to trust you if you're always changing? So I think that the challenge here is, can we stabilize and can we work equally across all levels and then have that radiate out and be that model? So thank you.
I literally thought about this question, but in a different context, before we sat down today. I was trying to figure out how I would get more women to join the Cocoa Police Force. Right now it's 5%. It's a very low number. And how would I achieve that besides acknowledging some of the challenges that there are to being a female police officer, things that prohibit women from trying to join up in the first place. There's this barrier of pregnancy. Feel that pregnancy, having kids is going to waylay their career. There aren't enough role models. That's a problem, right? You can't be what you can't see. So I thought that 14 square miles, I could walk that, right? I could walk a couple miles a day. I could just walk down streets. I love to walk. And I harkened back to my narcotics days and said, well, if I walk down the street and I knock on doors to introduce myself, well, that's not a very good idea because neighbors might wonder why the police are knocking on somebody's door, and next time something happens, they might be labeled as a storyteller or a snitch. So I can't do that. So I can walk down the street and people can see me, and if they want to come out, or they're in their driveway, or they're working on their car, they can come talk to me, and I can keep doing it. And I think we could talk about philosophies, and we could talk about, but in a practical fashion, how to meet people is to go out and meet people, and it's as simple as that to me. It's just walking around and running into people. I have friends that I met in 1987 when I first started in the police department that still call me out. So I can honestly say, like I said, Evander thinks he invented community policing in '89. I think I invented it in '87. So I was listening. So so I mean that's just a small example of how high crime, how I feel interacting in a high crime area. is challenging and how we're viewed by the citizens of high crime areas. There is a distrust, but there's also risk to talking to the police at any given time. Ooh, I got my first 30 seconds. So, all right. So,
So for our next question, Mike will be the one to respond first. This question comes from Sarah Ann Conklin of Cocoa. Sarah writes, I am personally a fan of our police department. I think they work very hard to serve citizens with limited resources. I'm wondering how you would shorten the amount of time between a citizen complaint of drug selling on the street and the arrest of the perpetrators.
That's a good question. So how do you shorten the time of a complaint about somebody selling drugs and then them being arrested? So what are we currently doing? I can't sit there and tell you what I would do to shorten that time because I don't know what we're currently doing here. So I know this, if somebody's on the corner selling drugs, I know we have guys that work narcotics. Do we get somebody to go over there and try to buy drugs on them? Whoever's on the corner selling drugs, we buy drugs on them, we can probably arrest them. Or the other things that we do know where the person lives. Where does he live? Let's go to his house, let's get his trash. I don't want to give away how we do all of this, but there's ways to find out what somebody's doing. So I think we have to look at prioritizing things also. So and it's going to be an answer to a question that Sarah may not like, this Sarah, right? She may not like the answer to this, is where does that fall in the priority for what the guys that are working on narcotics are doing? Are they working something a little bit more high profile? Are they working something that was related to a shooting and something else? Not that her complaint is irrelevant and not meaning anything, but where does it fall in? There's only so many people to do this job. So where do people fall in? And then if it comes in and it is something that is problematic and we get multiple complaints on it, then that's something that would get pushed at that I would send to the sergeant over that unit to say, hey, let's kind of step it up on this. And then a lot of times people hurt folks, but I will tell you, people do bad things. Sometimes you can't arrest them, but you let them know. I'm here. I'm here. So you're gonna giddy up and run out of here? You got two options. You go to jail or you knock it off. Or leave. Get out of Cocoa, go somewhere. Go to Melbourne. Go somewhere else. That's how we do that.
So that's a great question. I worked in the Organized Crime Control Bureau for 3 of my 20 years with the New York City Police Department. In that capacity, I served as an undercover first, and as an undercover, I bought drugs primarily in the Bronx, but all throughout New York City. I have approximately 200 undercover buys, and was responsible for 300 arrests and participated in thousands of arrests in the Narcotics Bureau. So the way to do it is, at the precinct level, we had street narcotics enforcement units, which were special units, and what we did was we set up observation posts, and we were able to see individuals doing hand-to-hand transactions and selling drugs, or we use cameras. At that point, you can arrest those individuals, which we refer to as the low-hanging fruit, right? Those are that's the low-hanging fruit. So you grab these individuals, and to me, I don't think they're the biggest perpetrators. They're low-hanging fruit. So what we need to do is we need to try to cultivate them to become confidential informants. If they become confidential informants, then what we do is we conduct long-term operations and we try to get the bigger fish. The bigger fish is the problem. That's the problem, and those are the people that we have to try to get to so that we can get rid of the problem, the narcotic problem that may be existing. So for as far as reducing the time of the complaints, I would recommend to do this, what we did, which was the street narcotics enforcement, which was a quick arrest. But I would also recommend that we conduct long-term investigations, gather intelligence, because there's nothing like human intelligence. So we need to get to speak to people so that we can really get to the root of the problem. Thank you.
James, one moment before you go. I want to remind everyone that after the candidates get finished responding to this question, we're going to pivot to the questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question, if they said something that sparked your curiosity, please go to the back and fill out the cards you have in the back of the room. Okay? I'm sorry, James. Proceed.
I thought Sharon was giving me the 30 seconds already. So it's interesting that this person that's inquired, his name is Sarah. There's a community policing concept known as SARA, Scanning, Analysis, Response, and Assessment, as a template to identify a problem and address it. You know, the law enforcement, we can be quick hits. We can have, let's say, a school incident where you can take a drug dog into a school, find the locker, then trace it to that person. On the complete other side of the pendulum is law enforcement has to react to a trend that occurs. If anyone remembers Spice, when Spice came through our communities, and now the opioid crisis, that is a long-term latent that has fatalities directly related to it that involve the highest educated people, the most successful people in society, and it's not just this person that's a crack user or dealer on the street. So for law enforcement to work with their subject matter experts and their partners to identify, if you pull on this string, are you looking for that quick fix, that quick hit and run of that arrest? Are you looking for the root causes that lead, again, to we say that symptomology where all of a sudden we're a nation in an opioid crisis that we didn't see coming. So law enforcement is extremely reactive, but when we look for a question like this, it is a very good question, and it goes to the want of an immediacy or immediate impact. But we have to, law enforcement, be cautioned to look bigger, holistic, to find out where essentially that broken windows theory of narcotics abuse, where does it really lead, and how can we attack it, and use even our federal partnerships with RICO and things of that nature. So we have to look at that very calm approach, find out where we can do something on a traffic stop with a drug dog or a knock and talk, which is a technique for us to be able to voluntarily get people to submit their narcotics to us, use our discretion where we can, and then certainly look at where can we go long term so that we're not repeating the same problem 5-10 years from now.
So, in relation to this question, I think that one thing that we don't talk about enough is that, yes, the police are out there on the front lines, but we have a lot of partners in this, and prosecutors are our partners. And we have an obligation, if we want to solve a problem, is to paint the picture for the prosecutor so that we can ensure that that prosecutor will prosecute the case. So how do we make a quick arrest from time of complaint? I would say that you have to paint a very, very vivid picture for the prosecutor, because that person that made the complaint might not even know that you arrested that person, because he's going to be out so fast that that like if you weren't home that day and you got arrested, you'd be back out the next day selling drugs, and you were like, hey, I locked him up, but you know what? There was no real robust prosecution because you didn't provide the prosecutor with the means to do that case. I would hate to have to tell somebody that it's not a priority, but resources are limited, and sometimes you can't arrest someone that people think are selling drugs. It's not necessarily always the case. Some people loiter, some people linger, some people are drinking. Those are things that can be handled in different ways. But as far as a quick arrest and that person's wanting to stay off the street, I think that's going to take a lot of illustration for the prosecutor.
There's some value in going last. But I'll make sure I don't get that 30 seconds. As a young officer, I did a little narcotics, not literally. I worked in narcotics, with some narcotics officers, and we made a lot of arrests and had a lot of fun doing that. You would like to, that was a very good question, and you would like to say, because I understand from the community perspective how they feel. They see an incident happening, they want action from the police department now. They don't want to hear excuses. They don't want to hear about this going to be a long-term investigation to really get down to the root of it and solve it, things of that nature. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear that something's going to happen right now. So depending upon what the issues are, we have to be transparent and we have to be accountable. We have to be truthful to the citizen and let them know. You say this person over here is selling drugs. We can handle this two ways. We can come up with a long-term solution, which I have to get back with you as far as the results, maybe in a few months, if it's gonna be a long-term type incident. We can do something immediately right now today, and we can go and do a knock and talk. Knock on the door and say, hey, we hear you're selling drugs. Officer, I'm not selling drugs. And then, of course, we have a verbal judo type of conversation to stop the activity, unless we have to continue to come back here. We may have to make this more long-term. So I would explain that to the citizen and ensure that my staff will explain it to the citizen. You want to have an avenue where citizens can always bring complaints to the police department. If they want to stay confidential, they can write it down and submit it to us. And we will be responsive to that. And we're going to be accountable. We'll let them know exactly how long this investigation is going to take. Give us some time. And if you're honest and open with them, they will pretty much agree with you. Because the citizens just want to make sure that you're concerned, that you're accurate and you're being truthful. And we have to be a person of our word. Our word has to mean something. And that's what's important to me. My word is bond. If I tell you I'm going to do something, it's going to get done. We have to be honest with the citizens and let them know the difficulties of this situation and explain it to them. And then we go from there. That's how we handle it.
Okay, thank you. So we have 4 questions that have been submitted by audience members, but in the interest of time, we are going to field 1 for tonight, and we will retain these, and these will be the first questions we'll lead off with at the event that's forthcoming. And so this question comes from Mike Pickle, one of our audience members here, and he wants to know, with the anticipated arrival of the Bright Line train and also the increase in Airbnb rentals, there could be an increase in crime in the downtown district. What are some of your ideas to prevent these future incidents? And we'll start with Richard here again.
This mask is hot. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I was fortunate. I had a great career, 30 years, and one of my assignments, as I mentioned previously, I worked in the Transit Bureau with the New York City Police Department. I was a special operations lieutenant in that command, and I oversaw all the specialty units, plainclothes units, school units, and so I know how to take care of problem areas in train stations and how to prevent crime in those areas. So I think that as far as Airbnb, I think Airbnb is. I actually own properties and I rent them on Airbnb, so I think it's a pretty nice thing to have. Not in Cocoa, but I think the problem is if you rent it to people and you're not making sure that the people that you're renting to are responsible renters. So there is a way to make sure that there are reviews that you can follow, and if you have a person that is not a good renter, then you should just make sure that you give them honest reviews and make sure that everybody knows so that when they come back, you do not rent to them. I'm sure everybody here has rented Airbnb, or at least some of you. But I think that there may be problems coming because of the Bright Line. We have to wait, we have to see, we have to assess, we have to analyze, and we just have to be proactive, not reactive. Let's not wait for those problems to occur or crimes or people to become victims. We have to make sure that we assess and do what we call recognizance, right? And make sure that we can try to prevent some of these crimes before they happen. That's what we have to do.
Again, excellent question. Earlier, I spoke about the fact that the mayor and the council set the vision for the city and the police department, our referees. Now, I would look at applying a concept as crime prevention through environmental design. Except that you're talking about a high-speed railroad coming in, and it's something that's not known to Cocoa right now. And there's a concern whether or not how does it impact Orlando, Orange County versus Cocoa. We want the industry here. We want the responsible industry here. So it's about that ambassadorship of how do we communicate at all levels with a company such as that's nationally known. How do we communicate that? Just like how would you communicate with Amazon as a distribution center coming in? So I think that with the rules and regulations, the charters, the ordinances, the statutes, using the police department as a partner to ambassador with those private entities that are becoming private-public partners goes hand in hand with something like Airbnb. I didn't know what an Airbnb was just a few years ago. I understood what a bed and breakfast was, this is St. Augustine and things of that nature. And then now I've got a greater understanding about people's private property becoming a leased project. I think it still applies to that as to what is the COCO that we want, and how does the police department work in partnership to have that vision carried through legally, justifying and always enduring the constitutional rights of our citizens, but also working with very good peeled onion language and working and being real with people as to what the expectations are for quality of life in your community, and how do we separate that from other areas that have very bad past practices, and what did we learn as lessons for where others are doing it. And does it fit in COCO or does it not? As a police department, we're going to work as a partner for the vision of the council, with the mayor, with the execution of the city manager, and figure out how do we work in partnership with the fire department, with code, with public works, all those other directors and facilities that make up our administration in the city. So it's not just the police department that's got the weight on their shoulders. We're going to work as a team on this. Thank you.
So, yes, those partnerships are great, but let's be practical. The train is gonna bring people in, they're going to commit crime, and they're gonna get back on the train. And we're going to have cameras at the train stations, and we're going to use that to prevent and arrest people for crimes that they commit within COCO. I mean, they're coming in on train, they're gonna go back on the train. So, I mean, we have to be, proactive as far as crime fighting goes. We can't just, rely on our partnerships and goodwill for people that are making money off of the Bright Line coming into COCO. Disney, I guess, is going to have get a big benefit from that train stop to its port. So I would hope that Disney is going to provide a lot of funds for COCO to offset some of the things that are coming in also, and getting off the train stop. That's from a practical crime strategy standpoint. Like you were talking about SEPTED, yes, SEPTED's great. I was wondering about that as far as the Cirrus development that's going up. Have we had conversations with the developers there about their environmental design to prevent crime? SEPTED second generation is more inclusive. Some of the SEPTED philosophies are very exclusive. They tend to keep people out when what you want is you want gathering places. And the same thing would go for the Bright Line and Airbnb. I don't like Airbnb. I'm sorry. I've lived for 33 years in the same apartment in New York, and all of a sudden they thought, Airbnb was a really great idea, and it's very difficult to enforce. That's, I think, I don't know if that's really a police issue either, other than noise complaints, and that would be more of a city, mayoral issue, city council issue.
With the railway coming in here and bringing an influx of people, I'm in the posture of having a very sophisticated crime analysis unit. I like to be data driven. Having that information, knowing where your hot spots are starting to peak up, so we can make sure we're putting those right resources in those areas and being creative in how we address those problems. So I think that having a very strong crime analysis unit to monitor what's going on, make sure we get that information as it relates to anyone that's coming in the city as far as the Airbnb. Once the stop is done here off the US 1 area, you want to make sure we do those SEPTED studies. We want to have those relationships with those companies to talk about safety and doing their design so that we can make sure we have proper lighting and so on and so forth to make sure those areas are safe. But anytime you have an influx of people, there is a potential that crime could go up, but it may not go up. But I think if you have a sophisticated crime analysis unit to monitor that, we can address that and get ahead of it and be successful.
So is the bright line gonna bring crime with it? I can't say yes and I can't say no. Because I actually was sitting in meetings several years ago in Palm Beach before the bright line was developed coming in through Palm Beach. We actually had these very conversations. What's gonna happen? It's gonna be bringing people up from Miami to commit crime in Palm Beach County. Well, they're gonna stay on the train and go back to Miami. So here it's gonna be a little different because you're gonna have people getting off the train, coming from Miami or Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach, and they're gonna come here and they're gonna get off the train, and they're gonna get on a bus and go to the port. So are there gonna be people here that can look to prey upon them? Possibly. We can't say that that's gonna happen, we don't know. So A, let's wait till it's built, let's start planning for it, but let's see how this station is gonna be built. So how's it gonna look? How's it gonna be? What are we gonna do with it? So before the station is built, because it's not built yet, we will have some say in that, will we not? Or should we not? I would hope we will. I would hope we will also. So to look at the people, when they come off that train, we want to keep them safe. When they come back to get on the train, we want to keep them safe. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that the bright line's gonna bring crime with that. We don't know. We thought it was going to, and it really hasn't in Palm Beach. What it has done is we've had people that can't judge how fast that train is going, because it goes a little bit faster than the other trains, and they try to beat the train, and they don't beat it. So I'm gonna tell you right now, that's gonna happen here. People think they can run across the train because they're used to one going this fast. Right line goes a little bit quicker. So maybe not in Cocoa where the stop will be, but maybe a little further south or towards Orlando. As far as Airbnbs, I actually like them. I like them too, I do. But are there problems with Airbnbs? Are there problems with them? You know, I know factually because we have it in my current county where you'll get some kid who talks his mother into renting a house for him, and the next thing you know, there's 50 kids at a house destroying a neighborhood. That's nice. It's a nice neighborhood, and what happens? Now the cops are getting called, everybody's going out there. So what we've done with this is now, so who owns that property? So that's where you have to go to with them now. You kick those kids out, you tell them, get out, everybody's out of here, see you later, bye. Don't care who rented it, go, unless the person that actually rented it, who signed it. So mom, get mom here. I'll be done in 15 seconds, I promise. But who owns that property? So the police department has code enforcement with them, do we not? So that's how we start addressing that issue right there.
Okay, we're gonna squeeze in one more. And we're gonna ask you this time to limit your response times to 2 minutes if possible. I think this is a good ender for the formal question for the evening. And this comes to us from Chris Hathaway. Starting with James. It's like, sit down. What is your philosophy on leadership?
Leadership has management within leadership. Not all managers can be leaders, and leaders have management qualities. My philosophy on leadership is that you have informal leadership and you still have formal leadership. Leadership involves risk-taking, it involves buy-in, it involves giving yourself and putting yourself in a vulnerable position where you're putting yourself out front. Leadership involves having people want to follow you because they want to follow you, not because you want them to follow you. And I think that in law enforcement, when you're putting people, like I said, in harm's way, and the fact that they volunteer, leadership is something that is legacy. It's your name. It's like if your family gave you your name. Leaders are somebody that we do wish to follow because they have our best interests at the forefront. And leadership comes from the most unlikely sources as well as the most extroverted sources. You know the leadership when you have it is contagious. So if you have a positive leadership environment, you are only limited almost by just your imagination. So my belief is that leadership is when law enforcement has to have its roots. Leadership is where the city has to have its roots. And you have a management component that will force, multiply, and support it. but leaders are where we have to take a city like Cocoa. And you have that with your agency right now, and we just want to go ahead and see what we can do to build upon it. So thank you very much.
My definition of leadership is the way I think I lead, and that's more through action than through words. I think that my management experience has given me credibility as a leadership. It doesn't, as a leader, it doesn't automatically make me a leader. I think I've proven that I can make hard choices. I'm loyal to my people. I'm loyal to my peers. I'm supportive to my peers. I'm supportive to my the people that sometimes actually do work for me. I'd like to say with me, but people work for me. And leadership is difficult. It's thankless sometimes, but I can say that it's a very big question to answer in 20 seconds. But leadership is just putting yourself out there to be followed, and hopefully that you're doing what you value, and that's being extended to the people that you are with.
When I think about leadership and leadership philosophy, I think about what grounds me as an individual, as a leader. And as a leader, I believe in having the utmost integrity. And I expect that of individuals that work with me. You have to have strong integrity. You have to be a risk taker. You got to be willing to take chances. You can't be afraid. You have to have the utmost courage. You have to be a direct person. You have to be very supportive. You have to be a mentor. You have to be a coach. You have to help people grow. That's how I look at leadership. And you have to allow people to make mistakes and allow them to grow from those mistakes. And what you do as a leader, you give them the instructions and then go hide in the closet. In other words, move out the way and let them do the work. And then just kind of guide them along so they can grow. You don't want to give them all the answers. That's how I believe leadership, my leadership philosophy, and that's how I've worked throughout my career. And it's very important that you mentor people to help them grow, because that's your future. You always have to have a succession plan. I've always done that throughout my career. That's who I am as an individual. It's coming from a genuine place. I mean, I don't know if you're noticing up here, but I had a pen. I don't know why I brought a pen out, because I said, when I come here today, I'm gonna speak from the heart. So how did it come out? It's how it came out. This is the real Evander with the exception of the Parliament and the noise in the 30 seconds. I'm gonna use my 30 seconds. But that's my philosophy about leadership, and I look forward to having an opportunity to one day work here with you guys as the police chief. Thank you for your time.
That's a great question, actually. So leadership, I have a master's in organizational leadership. I believe in leadership. But what is leadership? And what is a leader? And I go back to two things that people expect of their leaders. Competency. If your leader is not competent, people will not follow he or her. They won't. They could be the best guy in the world, best girl in the world. If they are incompetent, they will not follow them. And they have to be honest. And if you BS people, they're going to see through that in a heartbeat, and they will not follow you. So those two things that's what I've always strived to be. I try to be as competent as I can. I'm not the best in the world, I'm not. There's people better than me. But I try to be the best Mike Wallace I can be. And I try to do the best job I can. And I will kill you with honesty. You ask me a question, don't expect me to throw fluff back at you. So I'm going to tell you. If the baby's ugly, I'm going to tell you if the baby's ugly. I understand. So, and some people don't like that about me. I'll tell you right now. Some people don't like that. If you want someone that's not going to do that, I'm not your guy. Then just kick me off the board. Move on. There's a book that I read, and several years ago through a promotional process. It's called Good to Great. I don't know if anybody's ever read that. And it's a leadership philosophy. And it's about coaching people up, it's about mentoring, getting the right people on board. This is what I want. So if I'm the chief of Cocoa, this is what I want. This is what I expect. I'm going to get the people that think like me and want to work like me, and I will coach you up. I will do everything in my power to coach you up so we can succeed. Some people aren't gonna wanna do that. They're not gonna wanna be on board. They're not gonna wanna be on the bright line. So we'll slow down a little bit and you can jump off and go somewhere else. If you're not doing what's expected of you, I'm gonna kick you off. I'm gonna kick you off at 88 miles an hour. It's not gonna feel good. And that's life. That's the way it is. And that's how I am. And that, again, that's not what people want to hear sometimes. That's the reality to it. So confidence and honesty.
So I've studied leadership. I have a graduate certificate in police leadership and supervision. I also have a master of public administration and ethical leadership. And I've also taught leadership courses. So I prefer to lead by example. That's the kind of individual I am. I never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do or at least haven't performed, some duties I have not performed. My preferred style of leadership is the situational leadership, which you basically make sure that the individual you're giving the task to is able to perform those tasks. That's not saying that you don't give tasks to other people. You just train them and make sure that they can perform these tasks in the future. It is important for a leader to be not only ethical, but transparent. And most importantly, that person should be accountable to the people that we serve. So I love giving my officers assignments and opportunities to perform leadership roles, even if it is an unofficial leadership role. You give them ownership of the department, and that alleviates a lot of the problems that police departments are experiencing. Throughout the country, we have a problem with recruitment, and then the problem is that after we recruit, retention is the second problem. They go on, they want to work for the sheriff's department, some other department. So when you give people ownership of the department by providing true leadership, they will stay and they will have pride in the department that they work in. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the formal portion of our evening tonight. I have additional questions, and I know comment cards are written, but in the interest of trying to end at an appropriate time, we'll make sure that we get to those. If you're not able to attend them all, you'll see it on our YouTube channel or streaming. Go ahead.
I just wanted to address these beautiful candidates.
I know.
This is tough. Don't ask me to choose it. All I can say is whoever gets in, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I have my business, my home, and the police department is so important to me. That's what makes me feel safe. I live by myself, I'm over there, but I have a beautiful place to live. I wanted to say one little thing. A few years ago, we used to have what they call the Police Advisory Board. And when they had a candidate, they'd have them come before our board and we'd vote for them. But it was only a recommendation to the city council. And I'll tell you, I couldn't handle this right here. All of you folks are fine. And you're more than welcome to be a chief. I love it. I appreciate it. Oh, no, one for each day.
Thank you very much. That's a better way to end it up than in a note like that. We appreciate your sentiments that you had. Again, thank you to our candidates for sitting up here for 2 hours on the hot seat. I think they know that they will begin their, a few of them begin their interview with the city manager tomorrow. Then, we have another town hall meeting tomorrow at Eastern Florida State College. It starts at the same time. And then Saki will conclude his interviews on Wednesday. Other than that, we thank you all for coming out tonight to listen to what these fine individuals have to say. And thank you for being citizens of Cocoa.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.